Don't worry, they're going to love you, I promise, David reassured me, kissing my hand gently. I glanced over at him, noticing how he lowered our fingers together, resting them on his leg. In that moment, I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed with happiness. As I watched him sing along to the tunes playing in the car, I silently counted my blessings. Until a year ago, when we met, I had almost given up on love. I convinced myself no man would ever meet my expectations. Or maybe I was just someone who couldn't be loved. But none of that mattered anymore because I found him. The sunlight streamed through the sunroof, casting a soft glow on his face. Every few moments, the tall pine trees lining the dirt road would cast their shadows over him. I couldn't stop staring at him, mesmerized by how quickly he had gotten to know me, all of me, the good, the bad, the messy. Everything just felt so right. I knew, deep down, that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. It's funny how feelings can change so quickly. One moment, everything seems uncertain, and the next, it's like the pieces just fall into place. Nothing about David ever seemed off. Maybe I was blinded by the way he showered me with affection or the desperate need I had to feel needed. He was so easygoing, never wanting to argue, and he told me he loved me early on. The only thing that bothered me was how perfect it felt. I didn't have anyone close I could talk to for advice. My mom had pretty much checked out when I turned 18 and moved out. Honestly, I don't think she ever really cared about me, even when I was still living under her roof. I don't have any siblings, I've never met my dad, and I don't have many friends. Maybe that's why he picked me. After what seemed like hours, we finally arrived at his family's house. I stretched my stiff muscles as I got out of the car. We walked up to the door, and I nervously hooked my arm around his. Just before we could knock, the door swung open. "Oh, hi. I'm so glad to meet both of you." "I'm Lacy," I said with a shy smile. There was a brief pause, like time had slowed down, before the woman's face lit up with a wide grin. She stepped forward, pulling me into a hug that felt just a bit too tight and lasted a bit too long. When she finally let go, she grabbed my shoulders gently. "You are absolutely gorgeous," she said, her voice warm and sincere. "Mom, come on," David said, clearly embarrassed from behind me. "It's okay, David. Compliments don't bother me," I replied with a smile, though I wasn't sure if I really felt that way yet. "Don't mind her, Lacy. She doesn't really know how to set boundaries," said the tall man standing in the doorway, chuckling softly. "I'm Pate. We're so happy to finally meet you. We've heard nothing but good things." He nudged his wife, who seemed so focused on me that she hadn't heard him. "Oh, sorry, dear. I must have spaced out there." "I'm Linda," she said with a slight laugh. "You're both fine." "Honestly, I feel like I already know you," I said with a casual wave. "The introductions aren't necessary." "That's so sweet of you to say. The feeling's mutual." "Well, come on in, come on in." Linda gestured for us to enter. As I stepped inside, a strange feeling settled in my stomach. The house was large, but it felt oddly cramped at the same time. Everyone seemed happy to see me, but there was something about it that didn't feel entirely genuine. Maybe they had just had a fight, I thought. David seemed a little off too, but I figured it was just the nerves of meeting for the first time. The rest of the evening passed uneventfully, dinner and some card games. As it got late, I was shown to my room, and David walked me there as his parents headed off to bed. "Thanks for understanding why we're having separate rooms. You know how Mom and Dad are," David said as he opened the door, which creaked loudly. "Oh, no problem at all. I wouldn't want to make things awkward," I whispered, leaning in for a kiss. Sorry, I don't want to kiss in front of them." "It might be a little weird," he said, pulling back from me slightly. "Sure, that's fine," I replied, squinting in confusion. I didn't think it was weird to have separate rooms, some people did, but David's family took that very seriously. We'd shared a bed before, but only for sleeping, if you catch my drift. From the start of our relationship, David made it clear that he didn't want anything physical until we were married. Kissing was okay, but that was the limit, and I didn't mind. I always found it kind of romantic. We said goodnight, and I went to check out the bed. It looked pretty standard, but that uneasy feeling from earlier hadn't quite left me. The room was stuffy, the bedding was stiff, and every small noise made it hard to relax. The house creaked and groaned, and I couldn't tell if it was just the settling of an old home or if it was someone walking around. Before long, I was jolted awake by a beam of sunlight streaming through the window. I could hear the sounds of breakfast being prepared downstairs. I made my way down, hearing the family quietly whispering that I was awake. As I rounded the corner and stepped into the kitchen, I was met with the sight of them all sitting at the table, grinning at me. A massive, extravagant breakfast was spread out before us, more food than anyone could eat, like something out of a movie where the perfect housewife prepares an over-the-top spread. Oh wow, all of this for me? You really didn't have to. I could have at least helped a bit. I exclaimed, my eyes wide as I stared at the enormous stack of waffles. I sat down and began piling food onto my plate. It wasn't until I had been eating for a minute that I realized how quiet everyone was. No one was talking or eating. I felt awful for not saying more. I'd been so eager to dig in, and I'm never much of a morning talker. When I glanced up at them, that familiar uneasy feeling came rushing back, only it was much stronger this time. They just sat there, grinning at me with smiles so wide that it looked like their lips were about to quiver. They each had their hands folded in front of them. You guys good? Please, go ahead and eat, I said, trying to cover up my nervousness, but I couldn't hide it. Linda smiled even wider and said, you know, we're just so happy to have you here, Lacy. You're just so perfect. I almost choked on my waffles. Beautiful, I could understand. But perfect? After knowing me for less than a day? Lacy's right, let's eat, David chimed in, trying to lighten the mood. His parents nodded and started loading their plates. The rest of the meal was filled with awkward silence. Once we were finished eating, David suggested we take a walk around the property, just the two of us. We wandered a little ways from the house, and he apologized for all the strange behavior. I know Mom and Dad are acting a little off, and hell, I'm probably not much better either. I'm really sorry about that. My parents have been through a lot these last couple of years, and they hardly leave that old house. They mostly just see each other and me, so I think they forget how to act around other people. I guess I was trying to make them feel better by playing along, but honestly, I've forgotten how to act around them when there's someone new. We're all just so happy to have you here. I knew it might be a bit weird, but it's all out of love, I promise. He put his arm around me as we walked. His explanation didn't fully put my mind at ease, but it did help make some sense of it all. I was still uneasy, but I felt a bit more comfortable staying there. As we continued walking around the 50-acre property, I noticed how self-sufficient they were, solar panels and crops scattered throughout, showing they didn't need much outside help. David showed me a small duck pond with 2 old tire swings hanging from a tree. As we neared the house again, I spotted 2 playhouses close to each other. Then, I remembered seeing other things in pairs during our walk. David, why are there 2 swings by the pond? Oh, well, if Mom or Dad wanted to play on one with me, I guess, he answered, scratching his neck. Really? How did they fit on those? They looked a little small, I said with a laugh. Yeah, I don't really know. I guess they just squeezed in, he replied with a shrug. And the playhouses? Why 2? I pressed. Because I asked for 2 of them, he said, looking away from me. All right, you got me there, I said, laughing it off. In hindsight, I should have noticed the discomfort in his tone earlier. I was brushing off his odd behavior, believing his explanation from the start of our walk. I kept joking around with him, dismissing my gut feeling. We made our way back to the house, and David mentioned wanting to speak with his parents alone for a minute. His parents, still wearing their unnaturally wide smiles, didn't hesitate to agree. I went to my room and closed the door, pressing my ear against it, unable to resist eavesdropping. Normally, I wouldn't do that, but with how strange everything felt, I couldn't help it. What I heard was a panicked whisper, all 3 of them speaking in hurried tones. It wasn't like David was yelling at them, just a sense of worry. After about 10 minutes, David came into my room and told me he'd talked to them. When I returned to the kitchen, the atmosphere had shifted. Everyone seemed more at ease, though it still felt a bit forced. The smiles were less unsettling, but the tension lingered. The rest of the day was pretty relaxed. We ate more and played a few card games, but when night came, things took another odd turn. We sat down to play Clue, and Linda insisted I play as Miss Scarlet. I had always chosen Mr. Green since I was a kid, but she kindly told me to switch. We all exchanged looks. I glanced at the rest of the family, unsure if she was serious. They all seemed to silently signal her to stop, but she didn't back down. "Lacy, that's just how we do things around here." "Please, play as Miss Scarlet," she said through clenched teeth. "Why do I started to ask, but she stood up, facing me. Okay, I said, grabbing the Miss Scarlet token. "Yay! I love it when you play Miss Scarlet." "It makes me so happy," Linda beamed, practically glowing with excitement. "Would I play Miss Scarlet?" "What do you mean?" "This is the first time we've played Clue together," I muttered under my breath, as David placed his hand on my knee and shook his head, signaling me to stop. They went on with the game as if nothing had happened. That was where I really started questioning whether I should stay another night. I didn't feel safe anymore. Even though David was with me, he seemed to turn into a different person around his parents. I loved him, and I wanted to make things work. But how could everything shift so dramatically in such a short amount of time? After the game, Linda suggested we all sit down and look through some family photos. Pete seemed a little hesitant about it, but I knew how persuasive Linda could be. We all sat together on the couches by the fireplace. Linda made hot chocolate for everyone and brought over blankets. Normally, this would have been my ideal scenario. Everything about it should have made me feel relaxed, warmth, the love of my life by my side, everyone laughing and sharing stories. But despite all that, I couldn't shake the coldness, the fear gnawing at me. How would I explain to David that I wanted to leave? He should understand, he should prioritize me, but I knew how important this time was to him. I was completely zoning out, my thoughts consumed with how to escape that house. The stories they were telling drifted right through me, not sticking. That was until something caught my eye. Pictures. Most of them were of David as a child, playing outside, at birthday parties, just around the house with a big smile on his face. But then there were others. They didn't look quite right. The edges were slightly uneven, like someone had cut them by hand. The photos were a strange size, and David's figure would be pushed to one side, with random parts of the photo clipped out. My attention snapped fully back to the moment. I started asking questions, trying to get any of them to slip up, to say something that would explain the oddities in the photos. I couldn't ask directly, Linda would definitely get upset, and I wasn't sure how to push without making things worse. Then, Linda took out one particular photo and tucked it into her pocket with an almost frantic look. Her eyes went wide, and she shot a glance at Pete. I think that's enough for tonight. It's getting late, she said quickly, standing up and heading to her room. I looked at Pete for a reaction, but all I got was a dismissive eye roll. I didn't know how to read it, but it felt off. I glanced at David, but he just shrugged and gestured toward the stairs. We went up to my room, and I asked him to come inside with me. He hesitated but eventually agreed. What was that about the photo? And why did it end the night like that? I demanded, frustration bubbling up. Lacy, chill. It was probably just a picture of my dad's ex-girlfriend. He's disorganized and sometimes just throws old photos in boxes. It's happened before. It's not a big deal. They're just being dramatic about it, he said, trying to calm me down. That doesn't make sense, David, I said, my heart pounding. I promise it's fine. Haven't you noticed they're kind of weird sometimes, he added with a nervous laugh. Yeah, actually, I wanted to talk to you about that. Talk about what? He asked, his fidgeting making it clear he wasn't comfortable. I think we should leave tonight. I know it's important to you, but I need to get to know your parents slowly. This is too much, too fast. I hope they don't hate me, and I really hope you don't either, but please, David. Listen to me. I reached for his hands, feeling desperate. I'm not mad. I get it. I've been worried about this too. They can be a lot, and I should have seen that coming. What if I stay in your room tonight and we leave first thing in the morning? That way, it won't be so hard to just leave. I didn't like that idea, not at all. In fact, it felt like hell. One more night was going to kill me. I needed to leave, but I also needed him with me. My instincts screamed for me to get out, but I agreed anyway. Okay. I just need some water and a snack, and I'll be back in bed. I made my way downstairs, mind racing. Should I just leave now? Was David really worth all of this? As I passed Linda and Pete's bedroom, I paused. I knew if I could just get a glimpse of that photo, it would give me the confidence to stay, or leave. I had to see it. I knew deep down something wasn't right with that picture. I could hear them snoring, and I noticed Linda's pants by the door. There was no way she'd left the photo in the pocket, but I had to try. I pushed the door open as quietly as I could, but of course, the damn door creaked. Why did they have to be so loud? I grabbed the pants and heard rustling from the bed. My heart raced as I ignored it, hoping they would settle back into sleep. I slipped into the bathroom and locked the door, hands shaking as I reached into the pocket. I couldn't believe it, she had actually left the photo in there. I pulled it out, face down, afraid to look. My pulse quickened as I sat on the cold bathroom floor. I was so scared of what I might see. Suddenly, I heard footsteps. The family was starting to walk up the stairs. I heard David's voice, low and worried. Where did she go? Lights flicked on throughout the house, and I could hear people moving around, calling out, searching for me. I looked down at the photo in my hand and turned it over. I couldn't believe it. There, staring back at me, was a picture of me as a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old. It was a picture I hadn't given them, one I didn't even recognize. I didn't know where it was taken, but then it hit me, the pond in the background, the pond. The same one I had seen earlier on their property. Why was I in this picture? And why was I here now? I reached for my phone, desperate to call the police. I knew the chances of getting reception were slim, but it felt like the only thing left to try. I patted my pockets, my heart sinking. My phone was gone. Of course, the one time I don't have it on me is when I need it the most. Bathroom. Bathroom. I heard a whispered voice from the kitchen, followed by the eerie creaks of the hardwood floor as someone moved closer to me. I held my breath, sitting perfectly still. They knew I was here. They were coming for me. But I tried to convince myself there was still a chance. If I didn't move, maybe they wouldn't find me. Maybe I could just vanish. Then the brass doorknob rattled. I heard Linda clear her throat. Hey, Lacy, sweetie, are you feeling all right? Please, I just want to go home. I don't know what's going on, but I need to leave. This is too weird. I'm sorry, David, I tried. I really tried. Get me out of here. I screamed, slamming my fist against the bathroom wall in frustration. Lacy, I don't think you understand. You can't leave. David's voice came softly, his mouth right near the door. Like hell I can't. I shouted back. No, Lacy, you belong here now. You're part of the family. I could hear the sickening smile in David's voice. This is what you wanted, isn't it? A family? People to depend on? Yes, of course, I wanted a family, but not like this. Not like this. My voice cracked with panic. Lacy, open the door, Pete's voice demanded from the other side. Why the hell would I do that? If you don't open it, we'll come in. Pete's voice was calm, but there was something chilling in his tone. A long pause followed, and the silence seemed to stretch on forever. I backed up into the bathtub, pressing myself against the wall, hoping I could just sink into it and disappear. Then, the silence was shattered by a heavy sigh and the sound of furious footsteps retreating down the hall. The door slammed open and shut with a violent force. I felt a brief flicker of hope, maybe they were leaving me alone. But my anxiety told me that something far worse was coming. Moments later, the door opened again, this time with a sharp, booming voice. Lacy, I'm coming in there to get you. You better open this damn door. Dad, what are you doing? David's voice was suddenly there, cutting through the tension. She'll stand back, she's smart, Pete growled in reply. Then came the sound of something massive slamming against the door, bang. Bang! Bang! The wood cracked under the force, and before I could even react, Pete's arm shot through the hole, unlocking the door from the inside. The door flew open with a crash, and there they were, David and his parents, standing in front of me. Their faces were unreadable, but the anger in their eyes was unmistakable. David nervously chewed his lip, while Linda took shallow, rapid breaths. Pete still had that ominous sledgehammer gripped tightly in his hand. Pete moved towards me, and I froze. The hammer hung in the air above his head, and for a split second, I thought I was going to die. I finally understood what people meant when they said their life flashed before their eyes. In that brief moment, I thought of everything I would never experience, never knowing my father, never having a good relationship with my mother, never having children of my own, never seeing the places I'd dreamed of. And I wondered why it had to be me. Why David? I closed my eyes, bracing for what I knew was coming. And then, I heard David. Dad, what are you doing? All this for nothing? Stop! David's voice was frantic, and before I could register it, he launched himself at Pete, slamming him into the wall. You can't do this. You promised this wouldn't happen again. Again? Are you serious? Pete snarled, shoving David off him. You know damn well it wasn't my fault. Stop denying it. David shouted, his voice rising with anger. She fell down those steps because you pushed her. You need to stop blaming me, Pete snapped. It was your mom who killed her. She knew how drunk Abby was, could barely walk straight. Why the hell did she ask her to go downstairs and get something when she was that drunk? And then she hit her head on the way down. Stop it, Pete. We're supposed to be on the same team. Linda's voice cracked as she spoke up, her hands covering her face. Stop pretending David didn't throw her down the steps after she was already dead to cover up the murder. I know she was already dead. I don't know how you killed her, but I know you did. I know you did. Who is Abby? What did you people do? I whimpered, my voice shaking uncontrollably. Linda lifted her head out of her hands and walked out of my sight. The two men stood up and moved to block the door. A moment later, Linda reappeared, carrying a cloth in her hands. David and his mother moved toward me, and I tried to fight back, my body screaming to do something, anything. I couldn't just let this happen. But I couldn't fight David. Not like this. Not when I still didn't know how I felt about him. I knew I needed to escape, but I couldn't bring myself to hurt him. He grabbed my arms and forced them behind my back. Linda approached with the rag in her hand, the sickly sweet smell of chloroform hitting my nose. I tried to resist, but the world around me was already fading. As my vision blurred and darkness overtook me, I heard David's voice, soft and distant. It's okay. He whispered, his words just before I lost consciousness. The next thing I knew, I was waking up. My eyelids fluttered, struggling to open. I blinked over and over again, hoping my vision would clear. My head felt dizzy, like I was floating in some fog, and I prayed that when my eyes focused, I would be in my room at home. Maybe I'd see my Pulp Fiction poster on the wall or my knitted green blanket. Anything familiar. But as I rubbed my eyes and tried to gather my senses, my heart sank. The room around me was nothing like mine. Pink walls decorated with big flowers, but now those walls were covered in vinyl records and band posters. It looked like a room once meant for a little girl, but it had clearly been taken over by someone trying desperately to grow up too fast. I scanned the room, my eyes landing on a name written on the wall, Abby. My stomach twisted. I felt the weight of dread in the pit of my stomach, and a cold chill ran through me. I sat up in bed, my mind racing as I tried to piece together what had just happened. I nervously picked at the unfamiliar fabric of my shirt. These weren't my clothes. The realization hit me, someone had taken off my old clothes and put me in these new pajamas. A wave of violation hit me, and my breath became shallow. Then I heard it, a faint sound of music drifting through the walls. Dancing music, laughter, voices talking in the distance. What was going on? I glanced around, looking for an escape. The window was shut tight, and no matter how much I tried, I couldn't get it to open. I thought about throwing something against it to break the glass, but the consequences of failing seemed far worse than staying put. I cracked the door open just a bit, moving quietly down the hallway. I tiptoed to my old room, hoping to find my phone, but it was gone. None of my things were there. Hope slipped away faster than I could hold on to it. I was trapped. Terrified. For a few moments, I weighed my options. The only choice left was to run, straight for the front door, and then down the road, no matter how far or how isolated this place was. The house was miles from anywhere, but it didn't matter. I had to try. I took 3 deep breaths and sprinted for the door. Down the hall, down the stairs, around the corner. I ran with all my strength, telling myself not to look at them, pretend they didn't exist. I slammed into the door, trying the handle, but it was locked tight. As I glanced up, I saw the family standing in the doorway, their faces filled with concern. "What's wrong, Abby? Don't you want some breakfast?" Linda asked, holding a plate of food. "Abby? Abby? Why are you calling me that?" Panic surged in my chest. "Oh, come on, Abby, don't start with us. Come have some breakfast," Pete said, chuckling in that too friendly way. I looked around, my eyes scanning the locked windows and doors. I was completely trapped. In a desperate act, I grabbed the rolling pin from the counter and hurled it at the glass door. It bounced off harmlessly, like some kind of sick joke. The family's expression shifted to something darker, their worry deepening, but it didn't stop them. My rage surged, and I took a step toward them, holding the rolling pin tightly. In that moment, they could see the fury in my eyes. Before I could do anything, David sprang into action. He lunged at me, tying my hands behind my back with a twist tie before I had time to fight back. He pushed me into a chair at the table and secured me there. My wrists were bound, my arms immobilized. The family continued their conversation as though everything was perfectly normal. They acted like this was just another day. After they finished eating, Linda pulled out a scrapbook and placed it on the table. She began flipping through the pages, explaining the pictures. The pictures from last night, except now, there were full images. The corners of the photos I'd seen before were no longer cut out. And there I was, my face in all of them. Can someone just tell me what is going on? Who is Abby? Why am I in these pictures? I begged, my voice trembling. The family exchanged looks. David finally spoke. "Listen, Abby. I know it's a lot to take in. You've been through a lot while you were missing, and I know it's overwhelming, but we're here for you. I'm just so happy to have my sister back." "Sister? What? You've got to be kidding me!" I yelled, my voice cracking. "You're a sick freak. What the hell is going on?" I struggled against the restraints, trying to break free. But no matter how hard I fought, I just fell to the floor, exhausted, kicking and screaming. Eventually, they left me alone, moving on to other tasks around the house. I laid there on the slick kitchen floor, my cheek pressed against the cold surface. I thought I might come up with a plan, but my mind felt blank. Eventually, David came back. He lifted me back into the chair, sitting down in front of me, his eyes boring into mine. "This is what you wanted," he whispered, his voice almost calm. "What are you talking about? How is this what I wanted?" I whispered back, my throat tight with confusion. "A family," he said softly. "You wanted a family. You never had a real one. I knew you craved it. We lost someone in the family, and you needed to find a new one. It only makes sense." "Yes, of course I wanted a family," I said, the desperation clear in my voice. "I wanted to make a family. I wanted to have kids with you, David. I wanted to marry you, start a life with you. I didn't want you to be my brother. How is this even possible? Please, let me go. This isn't what I want." David's smirk only grew. He leaned back in his chair, relaxed. "You can't deny it. You saw the picture. You look exactly like Abby. It's like she never fell down those steps. You're sick. You killed her, didn't you? I whispered, my voice thick with anger. I didn't kill anyone, David replied, standing up with a shrug. You're here, Abby. That's all that matters. We missed you so much while you were gone. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving me with the horrible weight of his words. After sitting in that chair all day, my muscles sore and my mind racing, they finally came to untie me. I had made up my mind. I would play along, let them think I was compliant, wait for my moment, and find a way to escape. Slowly, they loosened the ropes, but they stayed close, watching me like hawks, expecting me to try and make a break for it, or worse, lash out at them. But I just sat there, smiling. It's so nice to be home again, I said, my voice dripping with fake sweetness, hoping they would believe my lie. They all locked eyes with me, searching for any sign of insincerity. We're so happy to have you home, David said, his voice full of relief. The family shuffled off to their respective rooms and shut the doors behind them. I stood up and made my way toward the stairs, deciding I should do the same, keep up the act. But as I stood at the base of the stairs, rubbing my tired eyes, I froze. My gaze fell on the carpet. The pattern looked so innocent, yet in my mind, it was tainted with memories. I wondered if any bloodstains from Abby's fall remained. I looked up at the top of the steps, imagining the horror she must have gone through. What happened to her? Was it an accident, or something more sinister? Were they really delusional enough to think they could replace her, or did they feel so guilty for what they'd done that they felt compelled to carry on this twisted charade? With every creak of the floorboards beneath my feet as I climbed the stairs, I swore I could hear her final screams echoing in my ears. I finally made it back to my room, or rather, Abby's room. On the nightstand, I noticed a phone. No password. I picked it up, heart pounding, and unlocked it. No surprises there, it was Abby's phone. My own was gone, and I was stuck with hers. I tried calling 911, but the line just rang and rang. I didn't have any numbers memorized, no one to call for help. I had been an idiot, thinking no one would miss me. My coworkers would eventually notice I was gone, but they wouldn't care enough to look for me. They wouldn't know where to even start. I was hundreds of miles away from my job. No family member cared enough to come looking for me. No one would even know I was missing. The only people who seemed to care about me were these people, these monsters, trying to gaslight me, manipulating my every move. What hurt the most, though, was that these people were supposed to be my chosen family. I had planned to get married, to build a life with David. That was all I ever wanted. They could have had it too. But it wasn't enough for them. They didn't want a daughter-in-law, they wanted a daughter, the one they lost. The one they killed. I'm posting this here, using Abby's phone because I don't know who else I can trust. I'm crossing my fingers that this somehow gets posted despite the technical issues I've had with this phone. My plan is to lay low for a while, gain their trust, at least enough to make my escape possible. But I know it won't be easy. I'll have to run for miles before I can find help. This isn't how I thought things would go when David asked me to spend the rest of my life with him.